Daf Mem Ches Amud Aleph will begin Mem Zayin Amud Beis, 2 lines from the bottom. Tani Rabbi Chia taught the following: Cherem Shebein Tchumei Shabbos. If you have a fish net that divides 2 Tchumei Shabbos, there's a pond, there's a body of water, and the body of the water is now in the middle between 2 cities, the Tchumim of 2 cities. So the Tchum of one city ends in the middle of this body of water. The Tchum of the other city comes and ends in the middle. So that midpoint, the fish net that divides the pond, that is the midpoint between the 2 Tchumim. So therefore, the water, the pond that's on this side, that water can be used by the people in this city, and the water on this side of the pond by the people in that city. But each city cannot use the water that's on the other side of the fish net, because that's water that was outside the Tchum. Now, this is based on the principle that you would say Hefsei Hefker Kainim Shvisa, that the Hefsei Hefker are Kaina Shvisa, even though they don't have an owner, they're Kaina their own Shvisa, and therefore the water that's on one side of the fish net on the onside of Shabbos is restricted to that Tchum, and it can't be carried to the other side of the fish net, because you say that it has its part, its kind of shvisa, on the outside of Shabbos, and it can't be taken outside its Tchum. So therefore, you have that situation of where the water is flowing. Well, perhaps the water flowed from one side, if the water that was on one side on the onside of Shabbos, during the course of the Shabbos, flowed to the other side. So if people from this side are going to draw from the water, if they're going to take from that water, then they'll be taking water that was on the other side, that was beyond the Tchum. And similarly, on the other side, if people on this side draw water, maybe the water that's on this side was on the onset of Shabbos, was on the other side, and now they're taking water that is beyond the Tchum. So he says, therefore, it needs mechitza shel barzel afsika. It needs an iron mechitza going down to the bottom to separate the water, so that they don't mix, that the water from one side doesn't come to the other side, because if they mix, then all the water is also, because you have water on each side that came from beyond the Tchum, and therefore you will not be able to take it and draw the water on Shabbos, because none of the water will be mutter, because it's mixed with water that's beyond the Tchum. He laughed at it. They said that can't be true. My time, why did he laugh at it? Why did he not accept it and say this can't be true? If it's going to, because this is based on Rav Yochanan ben Nuri, and therefore he said, because he learns the bright of Rav Yochanan ben Nuri that holds Hefsei Hefker Kainim Shvisa. The only reason that the water would be also is because on the onset of Shabbos it was on the other side, and that's therefore to answer it is based on the assumption that you would hold that Hefsei Hefker a kind of Shvisa, the things that are ownerless, where they are on the onset of Shabbos, that's where their Tchum is. And therefore you have a chashash that maybe the water was mixed, and the water that came from one side was on the one side before Shabbos, flowed to the other side. So the waters are mixed with waters that were in the Tchum or outside the Tchum, and you can't draw any of the waters. So maybe you'll say that he laughed at it because the only reason to answer is the whole like of Yochanan ben Nuri. The Eosphere like Rabbana Lakula, and he holds like Rabbana that are Mekel, that hold that Hefsei Hefker, not kind of Shvisa. And therefore they hold that it doesn't have its own independent Tchum. It'll assume the Tchum of the person that draws it first. And therefore there should be no reason to answer it, because it doesn't have its own Tchum. Even if it flowed from one side to the other side, the person that draws the water, it'll assume that person's Tchum. So it says, well, just because he holds the Kula, there's no reason to laugh at one who holds the Chumrah, that one holds like Rav Yochanan ben Nuri. There's no reason to laugh at that. So why? That's not a reason. Ela mishum, rather you'll say mishum design, because we learned in the Brisa, Elamai, you'll say, because we learned in the Brisa that flowing water does not assume its own tchum. Flowing water doesn't have an independent tchum. In order to have a tchum, it has to be something that's just kind of shisa. It's stationary. The place where it is on the onset of Shabbos, that's considered its place. It's kind of shisa. That's its bias. And it has a tchum alpayim mama from that place. Something that's in moving, that's not stationary, can't say that that's considered to be its makam. It doesn't have a makam, it's moving. And therefore the Brisa says that flowing waters, whether it's a river or a spring, it doesn't have its own independent chum. It's karagle kolonim. It assumes the chum of the person that draws the water first. And here we're dealing with water. So why should the waters have its own chum? That's not a reason to laugh, because maybe in this case of the Brisa, we have to be talking where the water is stationary. We're talking, for instance, like a pond, where it's not flowing water. And therefore, it could be kind of its own independent chum. Ella, so what's the reason? Ella mishum diktani. It says in the Brisa, Harach mechitza shel barzel hafsika. It says it needs an iron mechitza. It needs a mechitza out of metal to separate the two sides of the water, so none of the water flows from one side to the other. So why you say it needs iron mechitza? So it needs mechitza. Why not a mechitza of reeds, of konim? Why not? Because you'll say dialable mayim. Because you'll say that doesn't serve any purpose, because the water will flow through the openings of the reeds, between the lattice and the openings in the lattice. So shel barzel nami alabu maya. So what are you accomplishing by having an iron mechitza? The water's still going to get through on the bottom. It's not going to prevent any of the water from flowing through. Even if it's a metal, an iron mechitza, water is still going to go and penetrate. So you haven't accomplished anything. So Gemara says, no, still that's not a reason to laugh, because maybe what I meant to say is you need a complete separation between the two sides. That's what's required. But practically, you can't ensure that. So therefore, all the waters are also. Maybe that's what it meant to say. That's what's needed. It's needed, but if you can't fulfill it, so therefore the waters also. So still, what was the reason that he laughed? Because he would not have said this. Can't be accurate. He would not have said this, because by water, there's a special kula that the chama made by water, that the mechitza does not have to extend all the way down. Normally, by yabosha, by dry land, the mechitza has to extend all the way to the ground, or within 3 tvachim of the ground. But by waters, they're mekel, like we see from the following. Kirov Tavel. The boy Minei Rabbi Tavla Meirav, he has the following shaila, mechitza tluya ma'ashet b'churba. If you have a suspended mechitza, so can it be matir in a ruin, a churba? It's typical in the case of ruins that the walls are partially demolished and they're suspended, they're hanging, they're attached on the top, but on the bottom they've been demolished. Is that a valid mechitza? If you have, it has the size of a mechitza, but it doesn't extend all the way to the ground. Omrle, he said, "Ein mechitza tluya matir sal b'mayim." No, it's not valid. The suspended mechitza is only kosher by mayim, where it's over water. Kal hu she'kil chum b'mayim. It's a special kula that the chum made by water. So, for instance, if there is a water that is suspended over, if there is rather a mechitza that's suspended over a body of water, one can draw from the body of water, from the lake, etc., through those mechitzas. And like we learned previously, that if he has 4 mechitzas and it's suspended over a body of water, we would view the mechitzas as extending all the way down, and he's drawing the water through a Rishus Ram or a Carmelis. So therefore, in this case as well, that's why he laughed. There's no reason to say you need an iron mechitza, because by a mayim, even mechitza tluya helps. It doesn't have to extend all the way down. So therefore, over here, if you have a mechitza, we view the mechitza, there's a kula to say that even though physically the mechitza does not extend all the way down, it's a kula, the chachamim view it as if it does. The way the Rashba and the Ritva learn over here, there's no tam per se, but since it's necessary, it would be very difficult if mechitza by water had to extend all the way down. In many cases, it couldn't extend all the way down, and therefore the Chum were mekel, and they said this is only in a case where it's only a requirement for the Rabbanan requirement. Then they were mekel and say that we're mater mechitza pluyim. So therefore, there's no reason to say you need a iron mechitza, because you don't have to ensure that physically the waters don't flow from one to the other. It will be enough if we have a mechitza that's even suspended, we view it as the mechitza extended all the way down. And therefore, whether it's made out of metal or not made out of metal, it doesn't have to extend all the way down. We may have a kula and we view it that way. So therefore, this can't be accurate. So continue on with the discussion we had in the Mishnah. And the Mishnah discussed a case there where a person fell asleep and he woke up and it was Shabbos. So the Chum say, as opposed to Rav Yechon ben Nuri that says he has Alpayim Amal Chol Ruach, the Chum say he only has Arba Amas. Rabbi Eliezer says, and Hu Be'emsa, he is in the middle of that 4 Amas. And Rabbi Yehuda says, no, Le'ezer Ruach Shir Tziyelech. He can go in any one direction 4 Amas. So L'chayr, both of Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda are both saying that he has Dalet Amas. Rabbi Eliezer says he has 2 Amas in each direction, but they both say that they have 4 Amas. So, so it's Chum says Ein Lo Yala Arba Amas, but Yehuda Haina Tanakam. They're saying the same thing. No, there's a difference between them. There's a machlekes where you have 4 by 4 or 8 by 8. That's machlekes. The Chachamim allow him shmeina by shmeina. They allow him 4 amas in each direction, meaning it's 8 by 8. He has 4 amas in every direction, whereas Rabbi Yehuda says, no, it's only 4 in each direction. Tanya Nami Hachi, Yesh Lo Shmeina Al Shmeina, he has 8 by 8, so that we see over here, this sheet of 8 by 8, so that's the Tanakama of our Mishnah. That's only this machlekes where you have 4 by 4, 8 by 8. That's as far as walking beyond the tchum. But as far as the isser of being metaltal dalet amas and rishus harabim, dirakol arba amesin tveiloi. There, everyone agrees that the isser to carry in the rishus harabim is limited to dalet amas. You can't carry more. The isser deraisa is to carry not more than dalet amas. One does not have. It's not 8 amas. It's dalet amas. Where are these dalet amas written? So as we'll see, that's as far as the Gemara's discussion, as far as tchum. Where is the makor that a person has dalet amas even if he's outside his tchum? The Rambam applies this as well to the isser of carrying dalet amas b'shus harabim. Whether we see this, because the Brisa says, Shu Ish Tachta, that Pasuk says, Lagabi Daman, that a person can't collect the man on Shabbos, Shu Ish Tachta, stay in your place. So we darshan as follows, Kit Tachta, just like the area underneath him. Bakama Tachta, what's the area underneath him? Gufa Sholosh Amas, his body is 3 amas, Va'ama Kidei Lishad Yadav Ragel, and another ama to stretch out his hands, his arms and his legs. So that's a total of davenamas. Shuish tachta, we darshan and drosha that you stay in your place. What is the place of a person? Dalet amas. So therefore you can't carry beyond dalet amas outside the tchum. So that's one pshat. That's the Rav Yehuda Aimer Gufa Shalosh Amais. The Gufa is Shalosh Amais. V'hama Kidei Sheitul Chayfetz Yitachas Merag Leisav V'minyechem Yitachas Meresh. And another ama so that he can take an object and take it from under his feet and put it under his head. So for instance, he has a pillow under his feet and put it under his head. So it's a total of dalet amas. My beinayu, what's the difference between them? Beinayu arba amas mitzvim tzomas. Is it exactly dalet amas or somewhat more than dalet amas? So according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's precisely dalet amas. According to Rameir, it's a little bit more because to stretch out your arms and your legs, you need slightly more than dalet amas. Taisus has a discussion over here when he says the body of the person is Gimel Amayis. Is that the entire body, or it's only up to the beyond the shoulders, but the area above is not included in that height of Gimel of 3 Amas? Said to his son, by Minei, ask from him, Arba Amas Shamru. When we measure Arba Amas, we say a person has this, Dalet Amas, is it relative? Is it according to his Amma, the size of his forearm? Is it the size of his forearms? And is that the Dalet Amas? So do we say Bamididei Avinale? That's what we give him? Or do we have a standard measurement like the Amma that was used in the base of Mikdash, which is made up of 6 Tvachim? Do we say it's relative, so a taller person has a larger area and a shorter person a smaller area? Or do we say it's standard like the Amma Shel Kodesh? And if he answers you and say it's standard, it's like the Amma Shel Kodesh, then ask him, well, what's going to be with the giant? He's not going to be able to, in that small space, he's not going to be able to be Shavis over there. So he's clearly going to need more space than that. And if he says it's relative and we give him according to his Amma, well, you also have a kasha. Then ask from him the following: my time of Leikatanale, why isn't it mentioned in the Mishnah when it lists the things, that it lists the things that are relative to the size of a person? So he also when he came before Rav Papa, Amrle said to him, Idaikina kulai lova tanina. So if you're going to be medayik so much to that extent, then you will never be able to teach anything. Because really I'll tell you, really I'll tell you that it's relative, and you give it b'amadidei. And in Eig Melech Avoshan, he has a larger area. He needs a large area. He has a larger area. Why doesn't it say it by the case of the Mishnah where it lists the things that are relative to the size of the person? I'll tell you, because it's not necessarily so. It's not absolute. Because if there's a person who has very short limbs, he's himself not a midget, but he is nanas be'evarim. His evarim are very short. Now, if you're going to measure according to his forearm, if it's going to be relative to his forearm, he's not going to be able to have bishavis in that smaller space. It's not going to be sufficient for his needs because he's not a midget, but his limbs are short. So therefore, you have a case where you can't measure it relative to his size. So therefore, when it says that really we say over here that we measure it relative to the size of the person. Why isn't it listed in the Mishnah? You can't be medayik so much because there's a reason it's not listed, because even though generally speaking we measure it relative to the size, but it's not absolute, so it's not mentioned in the Mishnah. The Mishnah continues and says, Hayushnai mixes a shall say. So it says that if there are 2 people and their Dalet Amas overlap, or if there's 3 people, then their Dalet Amas overlap. So you have 3 people. The one on one side, his Dalet Amas overlaps with the middle. The one on the other side, his Dalet Amas overlaps with the middle. This one can carry with the middle can this one. This one to the middle, and the middle can this one. So the middle one can carry into both sides, and both sides to the middle, but the 2 sides cannot with each other. Lamaza daima, what is this compared to? So Rishon says, what is this compared to? 3 chatzeres. If you have 3 chatzeres, 1, 2, 3, they're all open to the Rishus Harabim and they're open to each other. The 2 on the sides can carry to the middle onto 2 sides. So they made an Erev Chatzeres with the middle, and they made an Erev Chatzeres with the middle, but the 2 sides did not make an Erev Chatzeres with each other. They each can carry with the middle with them, but the 2 sides cannot carry to each other. So, what's the purpose of this illustration? What's the purpose of this analogy? What are we learning more from here than we know from the case that's already mentioned in the Mishnah with the 3 people, with the 3 individuals? So more answers, this is what he's saying to them. The case that you just mentioned by the three individuals, what does it compare to? It's analogous to the case of the three chatzeros. So therefore, why therefore do you argue in the case of the chatzeros? And here, by the three individuals, you don't argue. You're mighty in this case with three individuals, so why do you argue in the case of the chatzeros? The answer, no, they're mighty by the case of the individuals because there's only three individuals. So if the ones on each side are able to carry into the one in the middle, and the middle to the sides, we're not that concerned that the ones on the sides will go to each other. Because there's only three individuals, but over here you're talking about three chatzeros. Each chatzer has many people in it, or several people in it. So the sum total of the people of the Urim in the three chatzeros, you have many people. And there's a concern that out of that group of people, one might forget and carry from one chatzer to the chatzer on the other extreme side. So there, since it's Avshad the Urim, there's many people, we're more concerned that somebody might not realize or forget and carry from one chatzer, the chatzer on one side, the chatzer on the other side. Here, there's only three individuals, so we're not concerned.